For those of you watching, I'm just prepping for the next hour of programming, where we're going to welcome Dr. Cliff Atkins from Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand. And I'll be starting at the top of the hour, introducing the PEI trailer and some just logistics for the program, and then launching into Cliff's recording. So stay tuned. Greetings, no matter where you are in the world or where you're joining from around the world. Welcome to the Polar Educators International 24-hour Fall Equinox Share-a-thon event. We are currently launching into hour number 5 of the 24 hours of sharing, and we welcome you to this presentation. The first thing I'd like to do is share my screen and share a trailer of PEI. It tells a little bit more about what we're about and what the kinds of things that we're doing. It takes just a moment for that video to come up.
Polar Educators International is connecting educators, polar researchers, and communities for a better understanding of polar knowledge. Earth's polar regions are remote, beautiful, and challenging places, and they have a profound influence on every one of us. We know these vast amounts of snow, forming ice sheets, sea ice, and...
Hold on, I'm going to pause this just for a moment because I was told that you can't see the video. Let's try this again.
Yeah, so when you screen share, Betty, just check that when you share it, you're sharing the window with the video in, because sometimes Zoom does a sneaky thing and opens a new window.
Okay, let's try it. Now I can't get the window of the Zoom up at all. Hold on just 1 second while I try to troubleshoot a bit.
Okay. We're not, as I said at the beginning of the whole thing, we're not broadcasters, we're educators. So bear with us, everybody who's everyone who's there. Thank you for
Try this again. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay. Sophie, am I sharing my screen right now?
No, you're not. We're seeing you, which is lovely.
It's not that lovely. Okay. I think I've got it. Let's try it again. Okay. Someone wants to come in. So let me share my screen. And I think this might do it. Now do you see the video?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Here we go.
Polar Educators International is connecting educators, polar researchers, and communities for a better understanding of polar knowledge. Earth's polar regions are remote, beautiful, and challenging places, and they have a profound influence on every one of us. We know these vast amounts of snow, forming ice sheets, sea ice, and glaciers, together with massive currents of cold water, contribute dramatically to the climate and ecosystems of our world, systems which in turn drive the health of our local environments and communities. Research shows dramatic change in the Antarctic, in our mountainous regions, and particularly in the Arctic, home to over 4 million people, which is changing faster than anywhere else on Earth. Scientists are confirming that human activity is playing a significant role in these systems, increasing the planet's surface temperature in ways that cannot be balanced out by natural processes. It is clear the urgency to engage the next generation in polar research and to rise to the challenges that a changing climate will bring has never been greater. United in our passion for sharing the importance and value of the polar regions, educators and researchers from around the world have formed PEI, an essential global network developing polar knowledge to engage a global audience facing climate change. We are collaborating to strengthen this community, building resources and relationships, and helping local audiences connect polar research to their everyday lives. Polar Educators International amplifies the voices of all those dedicated to understanding and protecting our extraordinary polar regions, and all Earth's inhabitants, for generations to come. Join us.
Okay, so wanted to also introduce the fact that we're having a PEI conference in Iceland in April of 2022. We've been doing a lot of pre-conference activities, which you can find on the Polar Educators International website. It's going to be a wonderful conference, and we hope that some of you will join us there. We also would like to invite you to be part of our Slack channel, PEI Slack channel for the Equinox Share-a-thon. You can join at slack.com and add comments or ask questions during this event or after the event, as well as post questions on the chat or comments on the chat in the chat space during the Zoom that's taking place. So I would like to show what's going to happen in the next hour. Let's see. We are going to be hearing from Dr. Cliff Atkins, who's in the Earth Science Program Director at Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand. I've had the pleasure of working with Cliff many times in the past, over 20 years, and he's going to be sharing with us about a huge online class that he was developing, and they were filming in Antarctica. So let's hear from Cliff. Hi, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Cliff Atkins, who's a senior lecturer and Earth Science Program Director at Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand. Cliff and I have a long association in terms of science and educational outreach, and today he's going to be sharing his work on a massive open online course, otherwise known as a MOOC, where they were actually bringing Antarctica to the world. Hi, Cliff, and thank you for coming to talk with us today.
Hi, Betty, and hi, everyone else. Thanks very much for the introduction. Great to be here and great to be able to engage with Polar Educators International again for this share-a-thon. So as Betty said, I'm going to talk about this massive open online course, a MOOC, Antarctica to the world. It's called ICE101x, and we've run this course a couple of times. I want to talk you through what the course looked like and what our motivation was, what we were trying to achieve, and then talk you through some analysis that we did of the course to try and gauge what the impact of the course was, and show you some of the key results. So I'd just like to acknowledge a few other people that were involved in putting this MOOC together and the analysis of it. So equipment, and then there's been this transition into the fully cold, super dry, cold environment we have now. So I know there's a more complete record offshore and the basins around Antarctica that you've worked on quite a bit. Can you comment on that a wee bit?
Sure, it's exciting for me to be sitting up here in the mountains in this cold, desert-like environment, trying to understand, what this location tells us, so that we can compare it with what we find in the records from drill cores beneath the ice that I've been involved in collecting over many years. A much more dynamic environment preserved in the geological records down at the coast. A history of the ice sheets growing and shrinking and growing and shrinking. Trying to reconcile those coastal records with what we're seeing up here is really a fascinating and intriguing thing.
One of the really, I suppose, enjoyable aspects of this trip for me has been watching Craig Stevens and Brett Grant and also Tim Haskell in action. And so I've been talking to especially Craig Stevens about asking lots of questions of him about his science for a long time now. But it's always been kind of a casual situation, but to see him physically and with the whole team kind of doing actual science and kind of has been really, really it's been exciting to see how they actually generate their data and the kind of physical nature of lowering and retrieving these measuring instruments, and all the amazingly wide range of skills that they all have to have in order to be oceanographers.
Okay, so that gives you some idea of what the modules and clips of the course actually look like. So our motivation for putting this MOOC together had several facets to it. Most of us had some experience in teaching at university level about Antarctica, and at least one of our team had been directly involved in the IPEI, so the International Polar Year, 2007 and 8, I think it was. And that experience showing the value of doing education, outreach, communication, and why that was important and how it was being increasingly incorporated into big scientific projects was a real driving force behind this. And we thought we can now use modern technology, the open education movement, to really take that idea forward and take things to a whole another level. Combined with the fact that Antarctica New Zealand as a national operator has got a mandate for communicating the science that they are supporting beyond just the scientific papers. So we had a wide-ranging motivation to do this, but there's some challenges as well. So getting to Antarctica is not an easy thing. It takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of money. So there was a lot of lead-in logistical planning before we could go, a bit of technical upskilling, learning how to operate the camera gear and the sound gear in cold environments. So sensitive electronic equipment in cold environments presents a few challenges. And of course, to put the whole thing together, we needed a digital platform, the edX platform, but a lot of support at the university level for creating good quality video and audio content. Also, copyright issues that we faced with the edX platform, and making sure that the pedagogy of what we're doing was actually coherent, so that our message was getting across and that we were actually achieving the course learning objectives. As I said, we wanted to know what the impact of this course was, so we created a survey and then we analysed the results. So at the end of the course, we had 411 of the participants filled in the survey. We collected information about the demographics. We looked at the population, student population, their attitudes to the course. We had a really good buy-in there. 96% of the people that completed the course filled in the survey, and then we were able to analyse the assessment items that they completed, engagement indicators, and the open-ended responses that they offered during the survey. So we compiled that and included all of that information, and then we were able to analyse it. We put that together and we published this in Polar Record, which is a polar journal, international journal, and it was called Engaging New Antarctic Learners and Ambassadors Through Flexible Learning, Open Education and Immersive Video Lectures. So we had myself as a geologist, we had the historian, we had researchers that specialise in online education and an educational psychologist. And this is what it told us. There were over 5,700 learners in the course from 48 different countries. We had a very low uptake of enrolment to start, and then we were featured on IFL Science. It's a Facebook site that went viral, and overnight we had thousands of people enroll for the course. 59% of the learners were females, but we had an incredibly wide range of children right through to elderly people in their 90s. 72% of them had a degree or higher education. We had a wide range of people from complete novices, but also people that have worked in Antarctica or been involved in Antarctic research. So 12.7% of the people that enrolled completed the course. Initially, that felt quite disappointing, but when we look at that in the context of continued engagement in MOOCs, that's actually pretty good. We see, shown on the graph here, an upsurge of engagement in the first couple of weeks, and then this drop off as people struggle to stay engaged with the course, and that's very typical for open online courses. We offered a certificate for those that wanted to enrol for one. So we issued 593 people passed the course, and then we issued 100 certificates of completion for people that had signed up to be verified on this course. So what do the students think? Well, there are a lot of comments made, and we've boiled it down into a few key themes here, and I won't read them all out because I know everyone can read this, but we'll talk about the main features here. The on-location videos were an absolute hit, and we knew that was going to be a strength of the course right from the start. Being in Antarctica, having the lecturers on site in that environment, describing what it was like. So this really provided that engaging sense of authenticity. So people really felt that they were in Antarctica with someone who knew about Antarctica. They were very appreciative of the opportunity to learn about such an unusual place, given how difficult it is to go to Antarctica. It's very expensive to go as a tourist, and otherwise you have to be involved in research to get there. So learners understood that this was unusual and quite rare, and they had this insight and were surprised at the diversity. It wasn't just a bunch of bearded scientists looking at some rocks. There's actually quite a range of people doing a variety of research in Antarctica. Generally pretty positive comment about how the course was delivered, the variety of techniques we used to present the information, also the way the course was designed, largely thanks to the edX platform that we had, and how accessible it was. So easy to watch videos, short, they can watch them anytime, and with a variety of other resources, so websites and other material that we offer to them online. There were a few negative aspects. Some of that revolved around some of the scientific jargon that we used. And although me in particular, talking about the geology, I was trying to be very aware that we would have people that didn't have a geological background. Some of the jargon does sneak in there, so they recommended perhaps having a little glossary to go with, because I would easily start talking about deep time and plate tectonics, concepts that were quite hard to grasp without any previous knowledge. One aspect that came through and was particularly satisfying to me was people's changing attitude to climate change. It was a theme right through all of the modules in the course, and one of the quotes that came through was, one person who had considered themselves a bit of a climate change skeptic prior to the course, when presented with the information in a clear scientific way, changed his mind and said, I get it. I can see what's happening here. The science makes sense. And yeah, things are changing. It's because of us. So that was a nice example of how the course actually had a very real impact, a very real change. And the other very satisfying aspect that came out of this was that we were creating a lot of Antarctic ambassadors. So people found a new insight, passion, and enthusiasm for Antarctica, and then they wanted to then go and tell other people about that. So there became more ambassadors talking about Antarctic science, why Antarctica is important, and why we need to look after it. So to conclude, here's the things we learned from our study of this. Most people reported a very positive learning experience. The immersive video lectures were a total hit. That was the way to go, a real highlight. We had a pretty good retention rate for what is a personal interest. So we realised we must have been doing something right. A lot of these new learners were becoming ambassadors for Antarctica, sometimes changed their perceptions about climate change. Despite all of the significant logistical, financial and time effort, it was, we thought, worth it. It was justified given the positive outcome we had from this. So ICE101 has run twice now, and on the strength of this, we actually developed another course called ICE102, which focuses on the biology. If you want to see a little taster of what that looks like, you can click on YouTube here. We hope to run that again in the near future. I can't give an exact date, but it will be happening again soon. There's also a little bit of talk about expanding this whole concept to do the Great Antarctic MOOC. So rather than this just being hosted by one university, trying to get buy-in from multiple institutions from around the world who can each contribute a module or two on their area of expertise and turn this into a truly global, international, massive, open online course. So watch the space, exciting times. I'm hoping this is something that will happen over the next 2 years. Okay, I'll leave it there and hand it back over to Betty, and perhaps we can discuss some of this. And I'll leave you with just a couple of interesting pictures and obligatory couple of penguin shots. Here's one. I'm going to have to talk about this one. This was one of those magical experiences I had in Antarctica. I'm a geologist, but interacting with the wildlife really was an amazing experience. And the next photo is one of my favourites. I took this one. No telephoto zoom lens here. They really were that close to me. Thanks, Betty.
Thank you, Cliff. Thanks so much. You can go ahead and stop sharing your screen. That was excellent. And I can tell you from personal experience that I did take the course both times it was offered. There's something new to learn around every corner. And I think one of the things you mentioned, Cliff, was about becoming this Antarctic ambassador. Like when you and I first went down as part of Cape Roberts, did you ever envision that you'd become this Antarctic ambassador yourself? I know I didn't. Not necessarily.
You're quite right. You know, I was working away on my PhD, very focused on the science, but realised that I was having light bulb moments and I was feeling personally very motivated and inspired and couldn't wait to tell other people about it. So I realised that I was becoming an Antarctic ambassador, and then meeting educators like yourself and realising that other people had this passion, this enthusiasm, this motivation to be able to take the experience and then translate that to other people, and realising what a powerful thing that was. And as I said before, it really showed me the difference between being a teacher and an educator, and being able to translate that enthusiasm to turn others into ambassadors too.
I mean, my experience up to the point of going to Antarctica had more experience with nature and life science topics, a little bit of earth science, but I did not have a background in geology and certainly did not know much about Antarctica. So going down there and learning from the scientists and then bringing that back to audiences of every age group was really fun. Like I thought, okay, I have to do so many presentations as part of the TEA program, but I love that. I love going out into the community, going to different schools, and becoming the person that got others psyched to find out more about the polar regions, not just Antarctica, but obviously the Arctic as well. So that was kind of one of my own light bulb moments as an educator. Like, how can I bring this to everybody and anybody that I come in contact with? And I ended up, I've talked now, gosh, it's been over 20 years. I've talked to thousands and thousands of students and teachers and community members through presentations. And I kind of missing that right now with everybody being in quarantine and not being able to be at schools, but you can still do online experiences like this. And we talked the other day when we were setting this Zoom up about how bad the technology was for communication when we were down in Antarctica in 1998.
Absolutely right. This was pre-YouTube, pre-Facebook. We didn't have those. Blogs were a new thing. And I can remember doing phone interviews with schools. So literally a phone radio patch talking to a classroom. But, you know, we obviously adapt, and there are challenges with trying to communicate passion and enthusiasm through a screen. But it can be done. And telling those stories and trying to make it engaging is one of those things. And I'm amazed at how Antarctica and the science, given the projects are involved with some pretty high level science, but you can turn this into very engaging science communication from little kids right through to highly educated adults. And it just requires an understanding of the audience and then pitching the change. I can remember some of the things you did, making up a drill core out of lollies and cakes and things. Really hands-on, really engaging, and the kids just absolutely love it. And it's amazing what the kids will do and how much of the science they really understand.
Well, and using the Flexibit, which was part of the education outreach for Andrel, and teaching my students about those different modules and different projects and different topics. And then they put on the science fair, the flexible science fair, the Flexibit, for their peers, for their parents. The parents would always say, oh my gosh, my child has learned so much about geology in Antarctica and just Antarctica in general. It was really fun to teach the parents that, you know, like you said, highly educated people, but hadn't learned about this topic before. So that was really fun. Cliff, when was as a student yourself growing up, when was your light bulb moment? Like what's something that really hit home to you in terms of science?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. And, if I think right back to my own primary school and having someone come into the classroom, it was exciting to have anyone come into the classroom and talk about whatever. I think kids are naturally scientists, they're naturally curious, and I can remember many examples of people coming in to talk to us and just wanting to soak up that knowledge. Fast forwarding through to university, I had a few light bulb moments myself, even as a PhD student, and one of the great light bulb moments for me was actually in Antarctica. I'd studied a lot of sedimentary geology before, but late one night up in the Transantarctic Mountains, daylight of course, wandering around and seeing preserved ripples on a sandstone surface, 250 million year old ripples, but I could tell from the shape of them that they'd been produced by waves in shallow water, because I've seen this happen on modern beaches. I take my own students there, and suddenly seeing these and understanding what they were and what they meant, I literally had to sort of sit down. I knew intellectually what they were, but I suddenly had this flash of understanding that I was looking at just a few moments of geological action, waves on a shallow beach. 250 million years ago. And I got it. I understood deep time. I understood these processes. And I've tried to remember that, and then in my own teaching, tell a few of these stories. And you can see when the light goes on for people, when they suddenly get this quite difficult concepts and they go, I get it, I understand. And once that's happened, people are self-motivated to want to know more.
They want to know more.
They want to know more.
Yeah, and I've seen that over and over in students. You know, you're teaching them a tough concept and they just, all of a sudden they get it. And then they're hungry for information. They're hungry to keep learning. And I think your point about having guest speakers in your classroom, that was one thing that was so fun when I was teaching, to bring in all my scientist friends from Andril or from other projects that I worked on. I mean, I had a parade of people coming through my classroom. You and Tim came in the classrooms, you know, several times, and Ross and Reed from Northern Illinois University came in. Reed brought a microscope one time, a very expensive microscope. I've never seen a bunch of fourth graders so excited about diatoms. They thought they were the coolest thing that ever happened, you know? So I think that, but then you produce little scientists, and you actually convince them that science is not just about men in the field, that women do science, men do science. We're not all indoors in a laboratory. We're outside doing all kinds of interesting things, like all of your geology work in the field. And I remember you telling me years ago that you didn't go to university specifically to become a geologist at first, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought university sounded like good fun, and a few of my mates went. I knew I wanted to do something scientific. I'd had a pretty outdoorsy childhood, and I was interested in that stuff, but I fell into it. You know, I took a course called geology, thought it might be something to do with dinosaurs and volcanoes. I didn't really know. Went on some field trips, had these excited, inspirational lecturers telling these amazing stories about cool stuff they were doing. It was hands-on. I went on a field trip. I could see it. I could understand it. And it unlocked my enthusiasm, my own sense of motivation, and there was no looking back from there. And that was a powerful experience. And that's what keeps motivating me as an educator and a university lecturer now, just trying to unlock that sense of discovery and excitement. And you see it happen, and then people, they're on their way. And
well, you take your students from Victoria University on field trips all the time, geology field trips. But I think that's what you're talking about, the MOOC. You can't bring everybody to Antarctica, but you essentially brought Antarctica to everybody by going down there and filming it and making people feel like they were part of that adventure, part of that journey. And as good educators, that's what we have to do. Engage the students to bring them along through those stories, through those videos and guest speakers. All of that helps engage students in the learning process.
Absolutely right. Being able to get that, build some rapport with the learners and tell those stories to make it a more engaging and immersive experience. The authenticity that I was talking about with the MOOC, and that came through really strongly. It's certainly a challenge when you're doing it through a filmed medium, but we're forced into that situation with Antarctica. But it was very pleasing to know that it does translate through film, and you can get that authentic sense of immersion.
Of being there. If you really do. I mean, I felt I'd already been there several times, and when I did the MOOC, I thought I was there again. I felt like I was there with you on these adventures. Now, I mean, I'd been to some of the places, so that helps, but it was so well done and such a great example of education outreach that could touch many lives, like you said, of all ages, from small kids up through, you know, senior citizens who might have taken this class just for an extra learning experience.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of scope in the future to do more with this. I'm involved
I hope so.
a few projects now, even looking at VR, virtual reality, and AI to really enhance that engagement, that sense of immersion and being there. So you can already take a virtual reality trip through some of the historic huts. And so we're hoping to do a bit more of that, and perhaps a future Grand Antarctic MOOC will have even more new technology that's coming on board to really help communicate.
Well, the technology changes so rapidly. I think back of when I came back from Antarctica the first time, using regular old-fashioned slides in a slide projector. And by the time I retired a few years ago, I brought my slide projector into class one day, and the kids were like, "What's that?" I'm like, well, okay, boys and girls, this is what we used to use before, digital photography. And my first camera that I took to Antarctica was a Sony Mavica, where you stuck the floppy disk in the side of the camera. It would hold about 20 pictures. I had like 3 trillion floppy disks all over the place, trying to keep track of them all. So every year the technology gets a little bit better, and that's exciting in order to bring the education to a variety of audiences. We've got a couple minutes. Would you just tell us a little bit about what are some of the research topics that you've been interested in when you've been in Antarctica?
Oh, okay, great. I've been quite lucky, really, starting out on the Cape Roberts project and looking at drill cores that were recovering from the sea floor. So looking at layers of rock that have been deposited millions of years ago, but telling us something about the climate history of Antarctica. So that's one aspect of it, and amazing being part of a big international project like that and meeting scientists and educators from lots of different countries, and actually meeting a few of my science legends, really, people that had written the textbooks that I had studied as an undergraduate student, and then realizing that these are real people, real scientists. So that was one aspect of it. But I was lucky to then be able to go into a few small field camp situations right up in the Transantarctic Mountains. Just maybe 4 or 5 scientists out there living in tents, pretty basic, looking at the geology there, mapping out glacial moraines, trying to understand how old they were. Quite a different experience from all the noise and bustle of these big international drilling projects. And I've also been lucky as a geologist to spend a lot of time down on the sea ice, and I've been able to interact with some of the wildlife, the penguins and the seals. I know many geologists who have been to Antarctica and never seen a penguin because they're at the base and then they're up in the mountains where there isn't much wildlife, and then they're back to the base and at home. So one of my projects has been looking at the wind-blown dust that comes from the very small amount of exposed rock. It blows out onto the annual sea ice off the coast, and you can see the stuff blowing along, and then that gets released into the ocean each year when the sea ice melts, and that becomes an important part of feeding the food chain. So the dust has got some iron in it that helps trigger the big blooms of algae, the phytoplankton, which in turn feed the zooplankton, which in turn feed the krill, which in turn feed the fish and the seals. And so there's this connection between microscopic geology, the dust, and life going on in the oceans. So that's been a focus in recent years, and enabled me to spend a lot of time out on the sea ice and interact with the wildlife. I perhaps wouldn't have predicted that I would be looking at that stuff, but it's been very much sort of curiosity driven. That all came about from working on a drilling project, seeing sand blowing along on the sea ice and thinking, that's interesting.
Wonder what that's all about. Yeah.
Where's that going?
Yeah. Well, it's a natural curiosity that we have. And I think that's one thing that you've taught me over the years. Like Polar Educators International is all about scientists and educators working together to bring education further along. And I think you've educated me as a scientist, and I've educated you a little bit as an educator. And I think that's what it's been all about. So I'm really thankful for that connection for over 20 years. It's been incredible. And thank you so much for being a part of this event. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you too, Betty. As you said, I've learned a lot of you, and you taught me the difference between just teaching and educating. And it's built the enthusiasm, and so I still feel very motivated to take the science beyond the scientists. So
well, and I'm retired. I'm retired and I'm still doing it. So I don't think it ends if you're really an educator and you really love to be with people and doing the teaching. I think that doesn't necessarily end when you retire.
Absolutely.
I think I'm the busiest retired person I know.
I would agree.
So thanks, Cliff. Really appreciate you spending time with me today, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.
Right, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks so much. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you so much for listening. Does anybody out there have a question or a comment?
I have a question, which wasn't from the beginning here, but I heard that Great Antarctic MOOC, like it would be also starting like in 2022. Is it would it be a continuation of that webinar?
That's a good question. They plan on showing those MOOCs again, on running those 2 MOOCs again, Antarctica 101 and 102. They don't have a definite date yet, but there's been a lot of interest and a lot of questions about if they're going to run it again. I'd love to see them run again. Like I mentioned in the talk, I did the Antarctica 101 twice, even after going to Antarctica 3 or 4 times, but there's still something to learn with every single module. So if you want to get in touch with someone at Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand, Dr. Cliff Atkins, you could try to reach him or me, and we'll find out. Hopefully they'll run that soon. It would definitely be something that you'd be interested in.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anybody else have a question out there or a comment? How many of you, I'm just curious, have done a MOOC before? That was the first time I had even heard of that massive open online course.
Yeah, it is the first time I hear about this.
Have you heard of edX? Because edX was the platform, I guess company or the format that delivered that talk, that course.
Yeah, not until recently. I opened the Instagram and I searched for like polar educations, and then I saw somebody tagging it, and that was the first time.
Okay. Well, hopefully there'll be a lot more. I think when you think about all the work, I know from talking to Cliff, all the work that went into producing that course. So you've got hundreds of hours of video. It's not just a little bit that you see in the actual course. There are hundreds of hours that get edited out to get that final product. And just the extreme conditions they were filming in, and just the thought that went into every module, whether it was history or whether it was the science or any little bit talking to other scientists or people that were down there near Scott Base and McMurdo. I mean, it took many weeks for them to get all of that filming done and all of those modules planned out. And then going back, and the editing process was incredible. And I know they ran that course first just at Victoria University, just to kind of a test run before they put it out on edX. So it's not something that happens quickly or easily, but it's definitely worth the time and the effort on their part to produce something like that MOOC. Anyone else? Hi, Pat.
Hi, Betty.
How are you?
It's so great to see you. Oh, it's great to see another faces too. Then some people I don't know, but I hope to meet you all soon.
Yes, it was good to see your presentation this morning on PEI Portugal. It was fabulous.
Oh, thank you. I decided to speak Portuguese, having in mind all the difficulties of language that teachers have. But I put my subtitles in English.
It gave the international flavor of PEI. And actually your slides were so well done that you could tell exactly what was going on. Even though I couldn't understand a word of Portuguese, I could understand everything that you were showing us on the slides. So that was perfect. So thank you for doing that.
Okay, it's so great to hear that, because when I thought about that, my first thought was, and maybe this not work for the international community. But after I think, no, I have to do this, because always in PEI we have made efforts for get all the people together, despite the language difficulties. And I found that solution to present all the work that I have done.
It really does work.
No,
So
right.
Vaughn is trying to get in as the host. I'm just texting him because he's taking over for me in the next few hours, but I'm going to wait and see so I can transfer the hosting duties to him. Hopefully. There you are. Okay.
Hi, Betty.
Hi.
Just
I'm
give me a second.
Host.
Yep, sure. Just give me a second.
There we go. And thank you all for attending these sessions so far. I find that each one is so unique and different and full of information. So I hope you're taking good notes out there. And Ram, I did make you the host. Perfect.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Betty.
Thank you.
Let me just
have a good few sessions.
Yes, I have 4 hours running now. So
I know I'm freezing cold. I'm sitting in a room in my cabin in Colorado, and the door's been closed, so there's no heat coming in. I've been sitting here for 3 hours. I feel like I've been in Antarctica for sure.
Oh my God. It's 40 degrees here, so India's like getting
nice
roasted.
Outside. I can see how beautiful it is outside. It's 60 degrees, 61 degrees. It's freezing in my room here.
Wow. Amazing. So let me just get started with